Hello, wizards and warriors. My name is TV Skyen, and welcome to Battle Chasers Night War. Now, if you're a regular follower of the channel, you might be reasonably asking, Skyen, don't you have like 14 other series of videos that you're working on and all kinds of projects that you're planning out, and aren't you actually extremely busy dealing with all of those? And is it not true that you don't actually have time to be starting on anything new right now? To which I would respond, yeah, those things are all true. And I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure why I feel so strongly that I want to play Battle Chasers Night War and talk about it right now. It's certainly not for the money. This is not like the hot new game that's gonna drive all the subscribers to my channel. And it's not because it's especially relevant or because I feel like I have some incredible new insight that I want to offer on the game, but it's late in the night, and I've been up for a long time thinking about this whole YouTube thing. And somewhere along the line of that thinking, I just got reminded that I really want to play this game and talk about it. And I've never played this game and talked about it because there's always been something else that I needed to do first. Like there's always been, oh no, there's no place in the video schedule because I've got this thing and that thing and those things, and I want to continue that series. And when people have been asking about this thing and that thing, and we're playing Battle Chasers Night War now. It's not going to be to the exclusion of anything else, and maybe it's not going to happen very quickly, but I want to play this game, and I want to talk about it, and even though it's not necessarily a great strategy for the monetization of my channel, which is, to a certain extent, the wages that I subsist on, even though it actually might hurt me a little bit in the search algorithm, I just have to do what I feel is interesting at some point, and I think this game is very interesting.
Years have passed since the great warrior and leader of men, Aramis, vanished. Left behind were his mighty gauntlets, artifacts of untold power, giving their wielder the strength to move mountains, as the stories were told. Also left behind was his daughter, Gully. She discovered her father's gauntlets, setting in motion the events that would make her a target of great importance and bring her into the company of her greatest defenders. Nolan, the wise and mighty wizard, whose tongue is as sharp as his wit. His mysterious companion, Calibretto, a war golem of immense power. Garrison, a swordsman, once brother in arms to Aramis, now sworn to protect his only living kin. And the rogue Red Monica, who can be foe as quickly as friend. Together, they have traveled the capital lands while defending Gully from those who seek the power of her gauntlets for themselves. Nolan, on a personal quest to learn more about mana, which fuels the world's magic and technology, has led the group towards a mysterious landmass known as the Crescent Isle. There, vast reserves of mana were once rumored to exist. As they approach the island, they quickly discover why so little is known about the area.
So, this is high fantasy, and it's high fantasy of the old kind. And we'll be talking about that over the course of certainly this first video and probably many more videos to come. But first, a little bit of limited animation.
Everyone hang on.
What are you waiting for? Shoot back!
With what? It's a stealth ship.
This is stealth?
Just do something.
It's always on me, ain't it? These kids don't know how easy they've got it.
We're being boarded.
Gully, get below deck.
You break easier than I do, remember?
More incoming, port side.
Oh no!
Gully, what? Gully.
I've got you. All right, Red. Looks like it's just me and, figures.
So the voice acting isn't, it's not great. Fortunately, we don't get that much voice acting in that many particular cutscenes. But what we do get is this. Now, like I said, this is classic high fantasy art with all of the little, faults and foibles that comes with, but take a look just at this environment. Like, look at the crooked trees there in the foreground. And how they contrast with the rich foliage around it. Alongside, you got needle trees and, deciduous leaf trees and just this rich, lush grass and the flowers and the little water effects. And this is a spectacularly well-realized aesthetic. And that's something that's genuinely very rare, because there's a lot of games that strive for the kind of visuals and aesthetics that this game has in spades, but they execute on those aesthetics with what I would call limited success. And the reason why I would call it limited success is because it's often not put together, at least I think, with a sense of composition. And that's really the thing that sets Battle Chasers Night War apart. Its environments have a sense to me of composition, of an artistic mind making a decision about this needs to look good, not just from the perspective of having nice graphics and nice textures and good lighting effects, but also to look good from the perspective of just an artistic perspective. Look at this gnarly old wrinkled tree. And this pine that's kind of crooked at the top. All of it tells a story that this is an old forest. This is a place that has been here for hundreds, maybe thousands of years, and which is relatively indifferent to our presence, which gives you that sense of wilderness that you kind of need for this, desperate survival scene to even take hold, as our heroes have been thrown from an exploding airship into an uncertain world waiting below. I mean, it's just when I remember, I've played about 10 hours of this game already, which is why I already knew what the timings were on that animation scene and stuff like that. And I remember when I first booted this game up that I wasn't blown away immediately. But the more I looked and the more I noticed about just how well put together everything in the first 10 hours of this game certainly are, the more I came to appreciate it, the more I just came to be in love. We've been playing for, 5 minutes or something already since we crashed, and I've just been walking around here just looking at these environments, just looking at these textures. And we're going to get into character design. Oh boy, are we going to get into character design and monster design, and we're going to get a little bit into the game design as we progress with what I hope will be a video series eventually. But the first thing I want to recognize about this game is just that it is gorgeous. Because, again, this is not a game that runs on super high-definition 4K, ultra-powerful God Ray graphics with the latest whatever teraflops and shit like that. It's not interested in playing that particular game at all. And that is part of what makes the aesthetic so successful, is that it commits to some very strong limitations. By the way, we haven't even talked about color yet. Look how cohesive and lovely the color palette that's being used in this area is. It all fits together. It all looks great.
Redo, you're all right.
Yes. Are you feeling better? You've been resting for a few hours.
I guess I wasn't completely prepared for that cannon blast. Was I dreaming, or did you leap off the ship to catch me?
I did.
How'd we make it down in one piece?
Nolan. We fell through a portal he opened, placing us on the ground with only minor injuries.
Yeah, not a fan of the voice acting, but since we've got the character illustrations right in front of us, holy crap, look at this art style. Just look, oh my word. See, a balance that is incredibly difficult to strike when it comes to high fantasy art, like the stuff that's going on here, is the balance between making the thing look gorgeous and working into that cartoony fantasy aesthetic that the thing has got going on, but at the same time making it look real, in this, especially in the sense of the texturing. And if you look at Calibretto here, just the way that, if you look at the little texture marks and the little, you know, the little scratches and scuffs and marks, without ever resorting to like realistic texturing with dirt and like metal textures and all kinds of stuff overlaid over the top of it, these illustrations do such a good job of communicating the idea of this complex mechanical war golem robot creature that has seen a lot of wear and tear, that has existed in a long life, you know, primarily filled with perhaps combat, without, you know, just defaulting to, oh, realistic is dirty, realistic is brown. It's bright, it's colorful, it's gorgeous. The mechanical complexity of the parts that you can kind of see going on inside of him is just, it's mech porn. Like, it's that same kind of thrill I get out of watching really well put together mecha sequences in anime, where you can see all the pistons and everything working in constant, that whole tech porn thing. I get that same feeling from this, and it's so... This is one of those games where I could give a damn what the story is. I could give a damn if the gameplay is good. I want to play it just to see it in action. I just want to see how things look. And turning our attention to our female character over here, Gully. Let's see if we can get her lit up. There we go. Same thing going on there. You can see how, despite sticking to that, you know, cel-shaded, very bright, cartoony art style that it's got going on, look at the way that this cape thing falls over her shoulders with the little lumpiness that is to that sort of exists in the gold bands around it. Look at the angular shapes of the color surfaces that she's got going on her shoulder over there, giving that sense of sort of square, solid place to her character, which is really important because she's a character who's actually a bit of a tank in some ways, like who's able to do a lot of protective stuff despite being a tiny little girl. And you got that thick heavy metal chain and the what's it called, the clasp around her collar, and these big thick golden belt buckle thing going on. Like, everything in this game, everything in this art style has this wonderful sense of weight and physical presence to it, which makes it feel, despite being so cartoony, it makes it feel a lot more like if you reached out and touched this, it would not be a light and airy, flat anime drawing, like which can be gorgeous, but they can also a lot of the time they can also look really lightweight, like they could just fly away at any moment, and it's not going to be sort of a grody kind of gross feeling, somewhat too real and fleshy human that you will often find in Western comics, where the artists, less so since the 90s, thank God, but where artists sometimes have a bit of a habit of rendering a little bit too close to a fleshy realism that I've never been comfortable with. That's a subject for another video where I can dive into it properly, but just the presence and place of the aesthetic in this game, I cannot gush about it enough.
And Garrison? Monica?
Garrison fell through the portal as well. Monica appears to be missing, along with Nolan.
Then let's get moving. They could be hurt.
Garrison already went ahead to search for them. Are you sure you're well enough to move?
I'm so woozy, but we don't have any time to waste.
Really not great voice acting. Apologies to the voice actors who put in hard work for this game. It just
First, allow me to further heal your wounds. Then we will meet Garrison.
it just does not work for me. And look at, yes, switching party members, yada yada. Look at how he moves too. Again, that's a really difficult balancing act to get right. Look at how much swing is going on in Calibretto's arms here. Like, just how much he rotates his upper body in order to really get that sort of almost slightly gorilla-like run to him, where you get Gully, who's like, she's leading with her gauntlets, which are the most important thing about her. They're leading a lot of her motion. You can't really tell what her legs are doing underneath all of the everything that's going on there, but the gauntlets provide that wonderful sense of movement that is necessary. And this is just like a standard running animation. It's not an important, well, it's a really important piece of animation because you're going to be looking at it all game, but it's not, you know, the one that's, ooh, this is the one that's going to define exactly who the character is and stuff like that. This is basic stuff. But when the basic stuff like this is just so nice to see in motion, that's kind of when I fall in love. Anyway, you might be wondering at this point, what the hell is Battle Chasers? Who are all of these characters? And why does the game kind of seem to assume that you know who any of these people are on some level? Well, it's because Battle Chasers was a comic that was popular back in the 90s and I believe up until the early 2000s. And it had this cult hit run that garnered a pretty substantial fan base of people who were very enthusiastic about it. But unfortunately, it never really did very well. And it never became a larger franchise. But it retained this very powerful, you know, dedicated fan base that has kind of kept it alive. And then, relatively recently, a video game came out of that desire that still exists in the fan base for a game that would continue some of the story from the original Battle Chasers. Now, I am not especially a fan of the original Battle Chasers. The original Battle Chasers, in my definitely not humble opinion when it comes to this stuff, actually has a lot substantially worse art than the video game does. It's really mired in a lot of, especially the early issues, as far as I could tell, is mired in a lot of the tropes and trends that were popular in 90s comics at the time, like a lot of over-rendering, a lot of hyper-aggression in the way things are presented. Not really my thing. But, yeah. But the game, like the way the game has translated that art style that I didn't quite click with into something that I most certainly do click with. Look at these character models, too. Like, these are the ones that are meant to be used in the game and in combat. Something that's really bloody difficult is attempting to translate, you know, that gorgeous comic art that we were looking at in the little dialogue cutscene there, and translate that into a 3D character model that actually looks like the art. That's a damn difficult thing to do. And again, just the modelers and the texture artists on this thing have they just blew this so far out of the water. Like, the aesthetic in this game is batting so far above what it needs to for the purposes of what is, when you get right down to it, a rather basic RPG setup with some interesting twists that we're going to get into once we actually get to see some combat, but which we might not even see in this episode, because I want to keep them around a half hour. And most of this is probably just going to be me gushing. And I mean, just look at that, you know, that crooked little set of roots snaking their way down, cradling its way around here, like this ancient tree that has kind of either fallen or grown into the ground, again, forming a natural bridge over this overpass. And inside that overpass, you find this lovely little valley where you've got these bones of some ancient creature that has unfortunately died down here, and a secret cave with a dead adventurer. And let's look at the light, and look at how carefully, like, this little section here is lit up in order to just highlight the treasure chest. And, oh, hang on, there's a skeleton over there. Oh, I can actually interact with that one. It's just, the way the aesthetic guides the gameplay and the way that the visuals are used to inform what's going on is just, none of it is revolutionary. But good lord, it's just so competent. Like, that's the thing, it's so incredibly competent. It feels like something that's made by someone, and I don't know if the development team on this game, if they're particularly experienced, I don't know anything about their history, but it just feels so much like a game that knows exactly what it's doing and knows exactly what it wants to look like, knows exactly what it wants its aesthetic to communicate, and just executes it on so beautifully. Like, if I could remove the UI, every second of this video would be a brilliant desktop background for me. And here we go, we see our first taste of combat. So, the slime. I love fist, bloggle, boggle, boggle. The slime. This is a standard video game enemy. Like, slimes are pretty much everywhere in all of the RPG games. But look at the way this one is expressed as this bubbling, sort of seething cauldron of malice and just disgusting, like, goggle, bloggle. Ew, like, it's really wonderfully gross, and it really feels like a slime mold that has come to life and that actually exists. Anyway, let me explain the combat system just a little bit. You can defend, which is sensible, or you can attack. And when you attack, you generate what's called overcharge. And overcharge is essentially extra mana that you can spend on stuff. For example, if I use the jab, then I will have enough overcharge to use scatter shot the next turn, for example, without depleting my mana pool. So you have this little creative choice in specifically how you want to approach combat and how you want to approach ability use. Anyway, the animation in this game is so good as well. It's so good. Look at that. Pow! Look at that punch. Look at that effect. Look at just how well that stuff just lands. And even the monster, like this little slime thing, gets to have an attack animation that feels powerful, that feels right. It feels really nice. Pow! And the sound effects, that argle blargle bubble bubble thing going on. Ew, it's just I'm not gonna stop gushing about this game because everything about it is so profoundly competent. Everything is just well done. There's really well, there are flaws in the game. We're gonna be talking about those because every game has flaws. But there's just nothing to complain about here. There's just nothing to go. I mean, it was so good until this thing started happening. Until that part started not working the way it was supposed to and not looking the way it was supposed to. I have some frustrations with the combat system, with some of the bosses that you fight, and like just some of the ways that the systems are executed, but then you get this gorgeous ass overworld map. Like, look at this fantastic overworld map. Which is where you get random encounters like this one, which is so nice. Anyway, overcharge does not persist from fight to fight, so you have to either use it or lose it. Which creates an incentive to go into a cycle of, like, building up overcharge, spending overcharge in an ability, and, you know, figuring out exactly how you want to stagger out your abilities in order to reduce the amount of mana you end up spending while still, you know, getting good value out of the extra overcharge you're building up. That's not really going to be super relevant in these early fights because that's pretty much just, you just punch them and they die. But later on down in the game, there's going to be a lot more interesting strategy to what's going on. Now, the overworld map is one of the things about the game that's, like, less interesting in most of the ways that matter. Can't equip that one yet. Meh. Wait, did I find anything for Calibretto? Nope. Sweet. But this is also, like, I think I like this linear path-based overworld map more than I would like an open Final Fantasy-style overworld map. If for no other reason, now here we get to play a little bit with Overcharge, I think. If for no other reason than it creates a more focused experience, like there's less pointless meandering around. There are paths that you can take, sometimes they are blocked, and you must find a way to unblock them, sometimes they are not blocked. And you know, that's relatively simple and easy to deal with. Pow. And now we get to finally use an ability, Scattershot. Pick up a rock and throw it. That's Scattershot for ya. So I don't think this is going to be any kind of like full playthrough of the game. I don't think I'm willing to go quite that far, and eventually it's going to get really old to just hear me gush about every part of it. But
I'm glad you're all right.
Yeah, here's Garrison. He's one of the weaker character designs, and this is where we get into some of what's my trouble with the original Battle Chasers is this character design is presented as interesting when it is like pretty much anything but. Like he's essentially Garen in a different uniform. He's so painful. Well, although of course it's a lot more accurate to say that Garen is just another version of Garrison here, but even the names sound similar. But it's like he's
during the airship battle, shielding the cannon blast.
It's about as generic as they come, and this is the downside of that really just classic, just gorgeously rendered fantasy aesthetic, is that sometimes that comes with some of the gorgeously rendered classic fantasy boring ass tropes that just are not very interesting to deal with.
Done the same for me.
Maybe, but with messier results. You're a brave kid, but remember, we don't fully understand the power of your father's gauntlets.
Look at his muscles. Like, look at how his muscles are rendered on his arm there. That's a little bit of that 90s reliquary coming through for us, I feel like. Now, it does do a good job of really sort of making it stand out how much this is a dude who thinks with his fists. Like, he thinks with, like, he's a man of action. He's got these gnarled muscles and, like, lots of scar tissue and stuff going on his arms that shows his career as a warrior. So from my character design perspective, that's alright, but
Had no choice.
No, I guess not.
I believe he was trying to thank you. Have you found any sign of Monica or Nolan?
I haven't. And this village looks long abandoned. There are lights on the horizon. To the east. Might be a town.
We should investigate. If they survived, they likely headed that direction.
What do you mean if? Nolan saved us. He can save himself. And Monica too.
You're probably right. Let's go find them.
so a lot of the lore in this game is delivered through, you know, the classic, which is find documents scattered around the place randomly, which is as a means to deliver a story, as a means to do world building and you know, deliver exposition and stuff like that. It's serviceable, but it's not great. Like, it's the kind of thing that annoys me in BioShock as well, that it's so heavily reliant on those damn audio logs in order to tell so much of the story about its world, and that's just, to me, it's just kind of boring. But that's the way it goes. Now, you can see, by the way, out on the left there, that we've got a turn order going on. And, of course, that is also going to become incredibly important later on in the game, where you're really carefully managing the exact turn order that your dudes are moving in, and being very careful about who's moving when and how. And, you know, yeah, that comes in. And we also see one of the few aesthetic missteps in this game. Look at Garrison. Look at his size relative to Gully. And then look at both their sizes relative to Calibretti over here. His character model feels like it should be like 10% bigger. Like, he feels like he should be just a little bit taller and larger than Gully is, but because she has those giant ass hands, she ends up looking stronger in some ways than he does, and it's It's true. It was a weird misstep the first time I saw it, and it's still bothering me now. Like, and that's the thing where what what it feels like what the characters are doing, rather what the artists are doing, is to essentially they're trying to present each character as their own thing. And so you get these very different proportions between sort of anime girl-ish Gully and sort of somewhat closer to the 90s comic aesthetic Garrison with a tiny head. And Garrison having such a small head is meant to make the rest of him look larger, except that kind of doesn't work when his character model is noticeably really kind of rather small compared to some of his companions. So it's not a flawless game by any means. Like, and that's the thing, like, Garrison's character model looks absolutely great on its own, and the aesthetic is really well executed on its own. It's just in the comparison between the two, that it's such a weird oversight for me. Punch! And again, I really want you to notice just the use of the smear frames and the effects animations that they've got going on. They're so effective. Like, they really deliver the power, the punch, and just the impact of the actions that are going on, which again is really important for a high fantasy video game like this, that the powers that you have available actually do feel impactful, even when you're running around at level 1 and 2 and you're not, you know, running around here being super powerful, that the aesthetic does do something to service the power fantasy of the characters, like to service the idea that they are really strong, and also that they take really big hits, even if it's only like 5 or 10 HP, that the hit coming in from the monster actually feels like it has a real impact, is the thing that makes the battles exciting to participate in. Let's see, nothing interesting, especially in my inventory. Bunch of weird stats. I've always been baffled by these in video games, like why we have these random stats pages. I've never really understood what they do. Anyway, I do believe that will be the end of the first episode. If you've enjoyed this, then I heartily encourage you to click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell icon and the other buttons. I don't know what else YouTube might be adding. If there's any other YouTube buttons down there that you should, like, you can click on, you should probably just click on them to be sure. If you want to, I do have a Patreon that you can support in order to help me do weird stuff like this that there's really no reason for me to do, except that I really want to talk about a thing that I greatly enjoy and just kind of gush about it. Then Patreon is a great way to support me doing that kind of a thing, because Lord knows the YouTube algorithm does not support that kind of thing very much. If you're not able or willing to do that, of course, that's completely okay. I'm just happy that you've watched the video this far. If you did not like this video, then I'm not sure I blame you, because this is kind of out of nowhere, and I'm kind of doing it on a whim. I guess because I felt a little bit stifled just by having fallen into something of a routine on YouTube, and I just wanted to do something a little bit out of the ordinary and unexpected. So if you're part of my regular audience and this is not the thing you wanted, of course, feel free to click the dislike button if you really need to. Although I should warn you that the dislike button was really popular in the 90s, and like it's never really gotten over the lost career it had. Like once, like it was popular in the early 90s, like right before grunge came around. It was kind of riding a wave of the new wave of the 90s music coming in the late 80s, and then you hit the 90s and everything seemed to be going great, but then Nirvana drops, right? And everything in Western pop culture suddenly shifts because grunge becomes this massive pop culture phenomenon, and sort of the dislike button had more of that sort of happy-go-lucky 90s vibe going on to it, and it just couldn't really compete in the new market, and, you know, the interviews dried up, and it couldn't book any gigs anymore, and, like, long story short, it's become, like, really bitter and resentful, and it's desperate to launch some kind of a comeback career. So if it attempts to give you, like, an album and insists on trying to sign it, or, like, it wants you, really wants you to come to the venue, and it's gonna give you VIP tickets and stuff like that, my advice is just smile and nod politely, and don't take it. Because it's not gonna be great, and I think he's in a kind of a downward spiral, and I don't think we should support it. And I heard that he's kind of hitting the sauce again in a way that he probably shouldn't be. I don't know if this is like a midlife crisis thing or something that's going on, but it's like, it's probably best not to indulge him in these unrealistic fantasies of making it once again after you were briefly popular in the 90s. That it's, I mean, I know it's kind of a retro thing nowadays, but I just don't want to see him get his heart broken again.